Wah wah wah. Wah wah wah. Wah 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 wah. Wah wah wah. Wah wah wah. Wah 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 wah. Doodle Bible School. Thanks for being here. It's good to see you guys. How's it today in your neck of the woods? It's like crazy hot and humid here. How is it over there? Oh, really? Well, good. I'm glad that you're doing well. That's great. Doodle Bible School, folks. Most of you know at this particular point, because we've been doing it here now for months, we're navigating numbers. Yeah, we're out there wandering around the wilderness, with Moses. It's kind of hard to say. You say it too fast and you kind of get your tongue tied around the back of your throat there. But we're on our way to the promised land. Yeah, we are. And what we're going to cover in this particular lesson is some things that we need to know when we get in the promised land. Stuff that God wants us to understand. I don't want to get ahead of myself too quickly. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, Sonny, just go ahead and click the button. Here I clicker. Ready? I had to look because I had clicked the wrong button if I did. Do the doodle. Do the doodle. Oh, where's my doodlator? Here it is. Do the doodle. Well, thankfully, our doodle this week is not quite as tough as the one last week, but I really messed up last week in a bad way. Okay, we're into chapter 28, my friends. Got to get my top off my doodle-a-dee here. And here we got the review of what we've covered thus far. Last time it was 27. And you might recall in 27, that guy kind of looks like he's, sad or whatever there. That's not really what he's supposed to be. He's bowing down to Moses because Moses is appointing him as a leader over Israel. And he's going to give him partial authority. That's Joshua, by the way. But in chapter 28, we kind of transition into a two-parter. Next time, we're going to deal with the same subject matter, right, with a little bit more information on a different slant, but it's all going to be about offerings, okay? Sacrifices or offerings, that which we give to God. Do you give offerings to God? Probably every Sunday morning, whenever your church family comes together, you probably have an opportunity to give. Well, that's kind of what's happening here, only it's a whole lot more serious than the way we take it today. All right, let's build ourselves an altar here. Just make yourself a square here, and then draw some lines across it like this. All right, and then you go like that. All right, but then notice this is the way you make it look like it's a thing. You divide that middle one there, okay, and then you divide each of them like that, and that makes it look like you're working with bricks or something. Okay, they really work more with stones, but anyhow, that kind of gives it a brick look or whatever. Okay, and then up here we're supposed to have fire, right? And let's see, I got to turn this around because I'm going to get our two backwards if I don't. Okay, there we go. There you go. That's not too bad. Okay, so make this a little bit darker, okay? But it's all supposed to be part of the flames that is on top of the altar. You see the two? Can you guys see it? Do you see it? Huh? Do you see the two? There's the two. Everybody see the two? Good. I'm glad you see the two. Let's take that one out. Maybe that'll make it just a little bit. Is that better? Yeah. So there you got the two. Now, over here, we're going to have a pad of paper. And again, I'm sorry that I have to do it this way, but I'm not as good as Gabriel, and so I have to kind of go like this. I'll take that out. And I know I should have shown you how to draw that, but it's upside down. I can't do it. But it's supposed to be, as you know, we can kind of square this off just a little bit here. Okay. There, that's supposed to, and it's supposed to be a calendar, right? So let's put an 8 on our calendar. Okay. Good? Yeah, that's not too bad. It's a whole lot better than last week, I'll tell you that. All right, so in 28, offerings. But the reason we got a calendar is because in 28, it's not just offerings. God's going to tell them when to make the offerings. That's actually a pretty important part. You're going to see that in the chapter here that we deal with it here in just a minute. All right, so offerings, part 1. That's what you're supposed to remember. Offerings, part 1. My little wife says something. I don't know what that is. She just put an I. But anyhow, she said that. And my parents said they're watching. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for watching. I appreciate that. We're in chapter 28 of the book of Numbers. And it's offerings, part 1. Guess what next week's going to be? Offerings, part 2. And by the way, the picture's going to look very, very similar. In fact, I'll give you the heads up right now. The picture is going to be exactly the same, except that 8 is going to become a 9. I may just save that one because I didn't do too bad on that one. But anyhow, there you go. Chapter 28, Offerings, Part 1. All right, moving on. If I were to ask you a question about that first segment of our time together, I would ask you this. What is the theme of Numbers 28? Offerings, Part 1. All right, can you doodle the picture? Well, it's right there. Of course we can. Can't you see it? Let's be silly. Big-Eyed Bob. Is that what we decided to call him? Big-Eyed Bob. Anyhow, Big-Eyed Bob wants to know, how does a train hear when another train is coming? It's a good point. You know, did you grow up watching, what was that little train's name that they had a kind of a cartoon thing that went, I think it was kind of a claymation. What was that? He had a name. I can't remember it. But anyhow, so he talks to the other trains, etc. If trains could talk, what would they tell you about the idea of listening for other trains? Big-Eyed Bob says, what or how does a train hear another train coming? Well, Big-Eyed Bob says, I'll tell you how. It's with its engineers. Engine ears, and he's got some big ones. Oh dear, I got all kinds of people talking to me here. Cindy says I cannot post it. Dennis says our greetings and love. He's all the way over there in Kenya. Thank you, Dennis. We love you too, man. I appreciate it. Cindy, thanks for working on it. I hope that you can get it all figured out before I close this thing down. Anyhow, what we're going with right now is a train. Listening for other trains uses its engineers. Engineers. I thought that was hilarious. All right, segment number 2. Make a memory. There's my little dancing brain over there. He's going to do some musculation here. All right, if we're going to make a memory, we're going to need to have a memory verse. And it looks like my memory verse ran off the page here. Let's see what we got here. Yeah, it did. See this right here? That's my pleasing aroma is supposed to be on the next line. I don't know. And if I get out of this, it's probably going to mess it up. So I better not even mess with it. All right, command the people of Israel. 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 So we got the first line. And say to them. And say to them, and say to them, and say to them, and say to them, and say to them. Command the people of Israel, and say to them. So we've got the first 2 lines. Say each of them 5 times. And once you've done that, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have a lot of it stuck in your brain. And then you can go to step number 2, where you leave blanks. And then you have this challenge. It's kind of like a game. And you have to go through and you've got to fill in the blanks as you move through the memory verse. You guys can do it. I know you can because you're like crazy smart. I mean, crazy smart. So that's the 2 ways that you make your memory verse happen. There's probably other ways. Listen to your mom and dad and various things. They probably have other ways for you to get it. Sometimes parents will have you say it, all right, before we eat our meal every time, before you have your breakfast, or before you have your lunch, or before you have your supper, you got to say your memory verse, that kind of thing, whatever. And it's just a matter of drilling it, keeping it in your brain. Keeping it in your brain. Okay, here we go, my friends. Test prep. Test prep, test prep. Here's what we got for that segmentation. How did the offering smell to God? Did we cover that? I don't think we did. Let's go back and check on that. Let's see. Command the people of Israel and say to them, my offering, my food for my food offering, my pleasing aroma. Do you know what an aroma is? Aroma is when you give your dad a hug and you smell his aftershave and you say, ooh, that smells good. Or better yet, because dads don't generally smell very good, when you give your mom a hug and you smell her perfume and you say, ooh, that smells good. Well, that's what I'm saying here is that's what aroma is. And God says that their offerings came up before him like an aroma. If you go, I believe it's to the book of Revelation, it says that today our prayers go up to God like a pleasing aroma. Because you might recall, this story is about a time before Jesus. But once Jesus came, we didn't have to have any sacrifices of animals and things like that. We still make a living sacrifice of our worship. But guess what a major part of our worship is? And that comes up before God smelling good. It's a sweet aroma. So, well, there's our thing-a-dang again. That was back to our questions. That's what I was trying to do. So we learned from our memory verse that these offerings smell good to God. It's a sweet aroma. Sweet smelling aroma. All right. I don't remember what we call a lollipop man, but here we go. What do you call a laughing motorcycle? Going down the road, and it begins to laugh. First of all, I'm a little creeped out by that. But second of all, I'm going to say to myself, a laughing motorcycle must be a Yamaha ha 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 ha. Yamaha. Yamaha ha 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 ha. That's a laughing motorcycle. Do you get it? A Yamaha ha 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 ha. Oh dear. Moving on. Now what we have here is segment number 3. And in segment number 3, we're going to ponder the passage. We're going to sit by the pond and we're going to think to ourselves, okay, what about that passage? Well, I'll tell you what about that passage. Here you go. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Command the people of Israel and say to them, my offering, my food for my food offering, my pleasing aroma, you shall be careful to offer to me at its appointed time. Meaning that one of the big things here with God was that he was giving them a schedule to live by. And you're going to notice here in a moment that the schedule that he gives them to live by is a schedule that helped them to always have a reminder in front of them. Something's coming up so that I can remember God. Okay? So at its appointed time. Verse 3, and you shall say to them, this is the food offering that you shall offer to the Lord. 2 male lambs. And we'll see in a moment that that happens every day. And so every day, they're going to offer 2 male lambs. That's an answer to your question. A year old without blemish, day by day, as a regular offering. So every day, you're going to offer 2 male lambs to God. The one lamb you shall offer in the morning, and the other lamb you shall offer at twilight. Why do you suppose they offered an offering to God at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day? What do you think that's all about? It's not on your test, but it would be worth you thinking about. And then he says, verse 9, and then on the Sabbath, you'll notice I got ... there after the rest of these, because it gives a lengthy explanation that you don't really have to know for this particular class. You ought to read it on your own, but for this particular class, all I want you to know is that the first big paragraph here, it says you need to give us an offering every day. Then verse 9, it says you need to give us an offering on the Sabbath day. What day is the Sabbath day? It's not Sunday, it's Saturday. Saturday is the Sabbath day. It's the last day of the week. That's when God rested, remember? Okay, Sunday is the first day of the week. So Sunday is not the Sabbath. The Sabbath is Saturday. And he said, every Saturday, I want you to make an offering. Then he's going to say at the beginning of your months, I want you to make an offering. And then on the 14th day of the first month, every year, I want you to make an offering. And then he concludes by saying, and on the day of first fruits. What's the first fruits mean? If it's the first fruits, think about that, because that's going to be your assignment. You're going to have to answer that particular question here in just a moment. All right, there's your 5. Well, let's just put it up here. Here are your 5 questions from that ponder a passage period of time that we talked about. There they are, right there. They're right there in front of you. Can you see them right there? I'm pointing at them right there. Okay, so there's your questions. Okay, can you answer those questions? I think that you can. Here comes our whirligig dude. You gotta love this guy. I don't know how he keeps from getting dizzy. What is the key to being a great doctor? Key to being a great doctor. I had to go to the E-room last night with a friend, and we had a really good E-room doctor. He was really good. What's the key to being a good doctor? I'll tell you. The key to being a good doctor is to have a lot of patience. Probably both of those. Both people that are coming in to be taken care of, that's important. But also that you are not rushing through things. This doctor that we had last night, he stood there and talked with us for a whole long time, and he was a really good guy. So if you want to be a good doctor, a great doctor, you got to have a lot of patience. All right, segment number. On the 4th segment, we're going to apply the why, doing, and we're going to ask ourselves, why does this passage really say something to me? What is it? Obviously it says a lot of things to the folks who read it back then, but does it say anything to me? It does. And it's right down here, this first fruits idea. I want to ask you this question. What is the first thing out of the garden? Not what. Why is the first thing out of the garden often the tastiest? Do you ever notice that? Cindy's got some strawberries over here. This year she made me a strawberry pie. Prior to that, I got all whiny, and she had made me a strawberry pie. But we went to town and bought these at Walmart. She then had enough growing on her little bushes or whatever, and she picked them and made me a strawberry pie from hers. I mean, 100 times better. Why is that? Why is the first fruits often the table? And why should it remind us of God? God says, I want you to give me the first fruits. And so what's going to happen is they're going to have an offering at harvest time. When things get ripe, they're going to have an offering to God so that God knows that he is first place in their life. That's very important that we put God, always put God first place in your life. I'll use an illustration here. You know, sometimes we give money. When we're together with our church family, we give money to whatever it is. But, you know, sometimes we give money and we don't even think about it. You know, every Sunday I give $20, and so you just throw it in the plate and you don't even think about it. If we're going to really be sacrificial, if we're going to give a real offering to God, if we're really going to show him the love of our heart, it needs to be something that we think about. It ought to be something that costs us something. First fruits. All right, my friends, here is the question that you're going to have to write me a little paragraph about. Why is the first thing out of the garden often the tastiest? Why do you think that is? And secondly, why should that remind us of God? The first fruits. Guess what's coming next? Another joke. The other guy is Big-Eyed Bob. What do we call this guy? Big Bert Tooth? I don't know. Big Tooth Bob? They're all Bobs. I don't know. Why did the mama bear, not the mama bear, Sonny, you've got to read it better. Okay, I'm going to start again now. Why did the mama deer train the baby deer to move quickly? Any thoughts on that one? You got mama deer, you got baby deer. Mama deer says to baby deer, you need to move quickly. You need to learn to move quick. Why would she do that? Why did the mama deer train the baby deer to move quickly? I'll tell you why. Because she was trying to make a quick buck. Evidently, the baby deer was a male deer, because that's what a male deer grows into, as a buck. She's trying to make a quick buck. That's not too bad, actually. It's kind of funny. Oh, here he is. I think we call him Frank. Fearful Frank, if I'm not mistaken. Oh dear, he says. Oh dear, it's time to test. And he says, I'm not ready. Well, Frank, if you'd have paid attention, you'd have been ready. Here you go, my dear friendly people. Here is your test for this fine time together in Doodle Bible School. There they are, 10 questions for you right there. Can you see them? I'm pointing at them right now, right there. Those are the questions. And that's going to be on your final test. That's what you need to learn. You need to be ready to answer those particular questions. And when you're ready to answer those particular questions, guess what? Then you're going to be able to do well on the test. And I know you're already ready because you're like crazy. Don't worry about old Frank down here. If he paid attention, but he don't. Man, I love you guys. I really do. Be there, Matthew 16:26.